Jamie.
Hey, Jamie.
I work on a project called To Write Love on Her Arms. And I have a pretty sweet job this week. I get to introduce a band called the Almonds. To Write Love on Her Arms is a non-profit organization. It didn't start that way. It grew out of a story that was written, and that was the title of the story. And it was the story of a friend of mine back in Florida. And basically what it was I spent 5 days with a girl who was denied entry into a treatment center. And the night that I met her, basically she was in a really broken place and had been there for some time and had been struggling with some issues that a lot of people don't talk much about. Issues like addiction and depression and self-injury and suicide. And hey, if you can just be quiet, because maybe the person next to you really needs to hear this. If not, you got to take it up with the redhead and he'll take you out. So anyway, this girl Renee, who I met, she had been living in these places for a long time, and she was denied entry, and so she spent the next 5 days with some friends and with myself, and just a lot of late nights getting to know this girl and getting to hear her story and the places she'd been, and these were her first days sober in a long time. And I asked her a surprising question about halfway through that time, and I said, hey, what would you think about the possibility of telling your story? And I expected her to say no. It's a pretty vulnerable thing. And she surprised me, and she said some things that I'll never forget. She said she loved the possibility that there could be a purpose for her pain, that other people could find hope in her story, and that other people could relate to these things. And so we made the decision to tell this story. And a lot of times when we hear about these things, it's in the context of a happy ending. And we kind of smiled at the fact that we didn't have that privilege, that we weren't there yet, that we were just going to try to be honest about it as it was. And so the story was painful, it was difficult, and yet I think somewhere in the face of that it was also ultimately hopeful. And we made a MySpace page. We just felt like the story should have a home, and we printed some t-shirts. We just placed one small order and tried to raise money to get our friend through rehab, and never had any intentions of starting a nonprofit or of it becoming anything more. But people began to respond, and people began to say that her story was their story, and that these were things that they had lived with as well, and they hadn't talked about. People wrote in on behalf of friends. They said they had friends that struggled with these things, and they didn't know how to help them. People wrote in that had lost loved ones to suicide and wanted to talk about it. People asked about treatment, where they would go, what it would cost, what that would look like. And so pretty quickly we began to see this really surprising response and this surprising conversation come to the surface. And these t-shirts started getting into some surprising hands, and some guys that spend their nights on stages started wearing them, and this story kind of began to spread. And we've seen some really beautiful things over the last year, just with people responding. And my friend Renee is sober. She's 1.5 years sober today, and we've really turned a corner and have this amazing opportunity to talk about these issues and ultimately to present hope in the face of these things. And so now we continue to sell the t-shirts, and we get some surprising opportunities like this just to talk about these things in places where it doesn't really happen. And we've learned a lot. We've learned that we live in a country where it's estimated that 19 million Americans struggle with depression, that untreated depression is the leading cause of suicide. For us in this room, suicide is the third leading cause of death. And maybe the most staggering number is that of that 19 million, it's estimated that for every 3 of those people, that 2 of them never get help. And there's such a sense of confusion and such a sense of shame surrounding these things. And a huge thing that we want to say is that there's a tremendous amount of hope in the face of these issues, and that depression is treatable. And we hear from people every day that have committed themselves to understanding these things, to meeting these needs. And so part of what we're doing is just working to build a network of people and places that are trying to help, that are part of the solution. And we basically exist just to try to be a really great first step to recovery. And we're going to be here tonight. We have a table in the back with info. We'd love to talk to you if you have questions about what we do, about where the money goes, about what it's like riding that bus, whatever you want to talk about. We're honored to be out with this band. We're fans of honesty, and I think these guys make amazing music that is also honest and ultimately hopeful. And on behalf of this band, on behalf of this band, we want you to know that you're not alone, and that there's nothing that we can't talk about. And it's a privilege to get to stand up here and say that. And I want you to help me to welcome some friends of mine from Florida, and welcome the Almost.